Hey fellow workers, my name's Kim Siever. Welcome back to my channel. When we think about the building blocks of any economy, past or present, one key concept often goes unspoken: productive surplus. At its core, productive surplus is the value created through labor and production that goes beyond what's needed to sustain the workers and replace the inputs used in the production process. In simple terms, after you cover the basics like food, shelter, wages, raw materials, and maintenance, anything extra that gets produced is surplus. The surplus can be goods, services, or money. For example, if a carpenter builds tables worth $1,000 in a week, but needs only $600 to cover materials and personal living expenses, the extra $400 is a productive surplus. That value doesn't vanish, it gets used or distributed somewhere. Somehow. In capitalism, productive surplus is typically captured as profit by the owning class, those who own the means of production: land, labor, machinery, money, etc. Workers are paid wages, but the value they produce often exceeds what they're paid. The difference is the source of the profit. That surplus fuels reinvestment in the business through new equipment, expansion, etc. Dividends for shareholders, taxes to the state, and in some cases, philanthropic donations or public-private partnerships. Productive surplus isn't exclusive to capitalism, however. In fact, it's existed in various forms for thousands of years across many types of societies. In smaller tribal communities, for example, surplus might take the form of extra food, crafted tools, or livestock. This surplus was often shared communally or redistributed according to social norms. A hunter might share their extra meat with elders or children. A skilled artisan might trade surplus goods with other families. In ancient Egypt or Mesopotamia, surplus agriculture goods supported a ruling class and large-scale infrastructure projects such as pyramids or irrigation canals. The surplus also sustained those who didn't work in food production, like scribes, priests, and soldiers. In medieval Europe, peasants produced more than they consumed, and the surplus was extracted through rent, taxes, or tithes by lords and the church. This surplus sustained non-producing classes and institutions and funded wars, castles, and cathedrals. In theory, socialist and communist systems aim to pool the surplus for the collective good. Instead of being concentrated in private hands, the surplus would fund public services, infrastructure, and social programs. Beyond the mechanics of production and profit, productive surplus is what makes it possible for a society to do more than simply survive. It allows for economic growth and development, innovation and investment, public infrastructure, cultural expression through art, music, literature, etc., and support for non-working populations. Let's dig deeper into that last point. Not everyone can work, and not everyone should have to in order to be cared for. Children, elderly people, disabled individuals, and people who are otherwise marginalized or excluded from the labor force still have needs. Productive surplus allows us to meet those needs. Children require years of care, education, and nurturing before they can contribute economically in society. Parents, teachers, healthcare workers, and entire education systems are funded by surplus value. Whether it comes from taxes, tithes, or shared resources, surplus sustains the next generation. Older adults often leave the workforce due to age or health. Retirement pensions, healthcare services, and senior housing are all paid for using surplus, either saved over a lifetime or redistributed through social programs. Disability doesn't equate to a lack of individual worth. Accessible infrastructure, support services, income assistance, and inclusive employment programs are ways that surplus is channeled to ensure equity and dignity. Even those who want to work may be excluded due to economic conditions. Unemployment benefits and job training programs rely on productive surplus to keep people afloat and reintegrated into the economy. In short, productive surplus is what allows a society to care for its people beyond strict economic contribution. Productive surplus exists in all sorts of societies, not just in capitalism. The question isn't whether we should have productive surplus, rather what we should do with it. At its heart, productive surplus isn't just an economic concept, it's a moral one. It reflects how we choose to structure our societies and what we value. Do we prioritize maximizing individual profit or collective well-being? Do we invest in the vulnerable or leave them behind? Do we treat surplus as a private reward or a shared responsibility? No matter the system, the existence of surplus gives us options. What we do with those options says everything about who we are. By recognizing the role of productive surplus across history and economic systems, we gain a clearer understanding of how human societies survive, thrive, and take care of one another. And in a world facing deep inequality, climate crisis, and shifting labor dynamics, these questions are more urgent than ever. Solidarity.